Princess Irala of planet Zyre stood by a large window in her royal palace, gazing at the stars that stretched endlessly into the night. Today was an important day. In the great hall below, leaders from different worlds had gathered to meet for the first time. The palace was decorated with glowing crystals and ancient symbols of peace, a reminder of the long history of her people. Despite the beauty around her, Zirala felt a mix of excitement and worry. She had been raised to be calm and wise, and she knew that maintaining her composure was essential. For generations, the rulers of Zyre had been taught that a steady mind was the key to a strong heart and a prosperous people. Today, that lesson would be tested as she prepared to face an unexpected guest, a human soldier. Captain Aaron Holt, a respected soldier from Earth, had traveled many light years to be here. The stories of his courage and resourcefulness had reached even the farthest corners of the galaxy. Many believed that humans were fierce warriors, but Holt was known for his strong sense of honor and kindness. He arrived in a simple, neat uniform, his eyes focused and determined. His presence was both a symbol of his people's strength and a beacon of hope for new alliances. As Holt entered the great hall, a hush fell over the crowd. His footsteps echoed on the marble floor, each step marking the beginning of a new chapter in interstellar relations. Zirala took a deep breath. Her heart pounded with a mix of nerves and resolve. She reminded herself that her duty was to lead with grace and wisdom, even in moments of great uncertainty. When Holt's gaze met hers, time seemed to slow down. In that brief moment, both felt the weight of centuries of history and expectation. Zirala's calm blue eyes met Holt's steady, warm glance. Without exchanging words, they both understood that the future of their worlds depended on this encounter. It was a moment that held the promise of peace, but also the risk of misunderstanding. Slowly, the princess left her place by the window and moved toward Holt. Every step was measured and deliberate. She had trained her whole life for moments like this, when her poise would inspire trust and confidence. As she approached, the murmurs of the crowd grew softer, and the air was filled with anticipation. In that grand hall, under the soft glow of the palace lights and the watchful eyes of the gathered leaders, Princess Zirala and Captain Holt stood face to face. The meeting was not just a formality. It was the start of a journey toward a future where old prejudices might be set aside and a new alliance could be born. Their meeting marked the dawn of change, a change that would echo through the stars and shape the destiny of many worlds. Both leaders felt the responsibility of their meeting, and hope for a peaceful tomorrow grew in hearts. In the great hall of Princess Zirala's palace, the atmosphere was quiet and tense after her first brave step toward Captain Aaron Holt. All eyes were on them as they stood in the center of the room. The hall was large and decorated with ancient symbols and soft, glowing lights that made the space feel both modern and old. The people in the room whispered in soft voices, each person eager to see how the meeting would go. Princess Zirala looked calm and collected, but inside she felt a mix of excitement and worry. She was raised to be graceful, and she knew that first impressions were very important. Her eyes showed a hint of sadness and strength as she observed Holt, who stood confidently in his simple uniform. Captain Holt, known for his kindness and strength, looked at her with calm respect. His eyes were full of determination and a promise to protect his people. Even though he was a soldier, his smile was gentle, and he spoke with a kind voice that seemed to ease the tension in the room. Both leaders had spent their lives learning about the ways of their people. Zirala had been taught to value honor and duty above all else, while Holt had learned that courage meant not only fighting but also caring for others. Their different worlds met in that moment, and each could see a reflection of their own struggles in the other's eyes. The princess noticed the scars on Holt's face, which told a story of many battles fought with bravery. Holt, in turn, saw in her the weight of 1,000 expectations as she carried the hopes of her people on her shoulders. As they stood there, a soft breeze flowed through the open windows of the hall, and the light danced on their faces. The simple beauty of that moment made everyone in the room pause and take notice. In that quiet time, A silent dialogue began between them. They did not need many words to share their feelings. A gentle nod from Holt and a slight smile from Zirala spoke volumes about their willingness to understand one another. The crowd around them waited in respectful silence, sensing that this meeting was more than just a simple introduction. It was the beginning of a new story, where old traditions and modern values could come together. The princess and the soldier, each representing their own worlds, started to build a bridge with their calm actions and honest looks. In this first exchange, they both began to understand that even though their cultures were very different, they shared a common desire for peace and hope for a better future. In that quiet moment, with soft light and gentle words, the first impressions laid the foundation for a journey that could change the fate of two worlds. The meeting had just begun, but the promise of understanding and unity shone in the eyes of both Princess Zirala and Captain Aaron Holt. The next morning, in a quiet meeting room within the palace, Princess Zirala and Captain Aaron Holt sat across from each other at a long wooden table. The room was simply decorated with symbols of peace and unity, and soft light filled the space, setting a calm yet serious mood. Though the environment was peaceful, both leaders felt the tension of their very different ideas. Princess Zirala began the conversation in her calm, measured tone. "Captain Holt," she said, "our traditions have guided my people for many generations. They remind us of our past, our values, and the honor that we must uphold. These customs are the foundation of our strength." Her eyes held a steady determination as she spoke, revealing her deep connection to her heritage. Captain Holt listened carefully, nodding with respectful attention. When he spoke, his voice was firm and sincere. "Princess, I respect the traditions of your people, and I know they hold great meaning. However, my people on Earth believe that while our past is important, we must also be ready to change with the times. We face new challenges every day that require fresh ideas and new ways of thinking." His words were simple, yet they carried the weight of his experiences and the hopes of his nation. Zirala paused, reflecting on Holt's words. She remembered the lessons of her ancestors and the stories of old battles fought in the name of honor and duty. Yet she could not ignore the practical side of Holt's argument. "I understand your point," she admitted softly. "Change is sometimes necessary. But the customs that we have followed are not just old stories. They are the heart of who we are. They have given us purpose and direction." The captain leaned forward, his eyes meeting hers with earnest intensity. "And on Earth, we believe that strength comes from our ability to adapt. We learn from our past, yes, but we also look to the future with open minds. Our progress comes from innovation and the willingness to embrace new ideas." He paused, letting his words settle in the quiet room. "How can we honor both our traditions and our need to grow?" A thoughtful silence fell between them as each considered the other's words. Outside the room, diplomats and aides watched with hopeful anticipation, aware that the answers reached here might change the course of future relations between their worlds. Princess Zirala's gaze softened as she replied, "Perhaps the way forward is to combine the best of both worlds. My people's traditions can provide us with a strong foundation, while your ideas of progress can help us overcome the challenges we face now." Her voice, filled with a mix of hope and resolve, reflected her desire to find common ground. In that quiet moment, the clash of their ideals began to turn into a conversation of collaboration. Though they came from different worlds with different beliefs, both leaders shared the same goal: a peaceful and prosperous future for all. Their discussion, honest and respectful, was the first step in building a bridge between old customs and new ideas, a bridge that could unite their people in the days to come. Princess Zirala walked through the quiet palace gardens, her long robes flowing like water as she moved. The air smelled of blooming starflowers, their soft glow lighting the path. Despite the beauty around her, her mind was restless. The conversation with Captain Holt earlier had stirred something deep within her. His words about change and adaptation challenged everything she had been taught. For as long as she could remember, Zirala had been told that duty to tradition was the highest honor. Her father, The great King Veldar had often reminded her, "A leader does not question the past, Zirala. We follow the path laid before us." Yet now, for the first time, she found herself wondering if that path was enough. Not far from the palace, Captain Holt sat alone in his quarters, staring out of the window at the twin moons of Zur's sky. He let out a slow breath, remembering his own past. Life as a soldier had never been easy. He had seen war, he had lost friends, and he had learned that survival often depended on the ability to adapt. He remembered the faces of his fallen comrades, men and women who had fought bravely, but whose rigid thinking had sometimes cost them their lives. He ran a hand through his short brown hair, thinking back to his early training. His commanding officer's words echoed in his mind. "A soldier who refuses to change is a soldier who won't last long." That lesson had saved him many times. But here, in this palace, surrounded by a culture so different from his own, he wondered if there was another kind of strength, one that came from holding on to something unshakable. The next morning, fate brought them together once more. In the palace library, Zirala was reading an ancient book about the wars of her ancestors when she noticed Holt standing near a shelf, observing a holographic display of historical events. "You seem interested in our history," she said, her voice calm but curious. Holt turned, giving a small nod. "I believe history tells us who we are, but I also believe we have the power to change our future." Zirala studied him for a moment. "Do you think my people should abandon their traditions?" "No," Holt replied honestly. "I think traditions are important. They give us identity. But I also think refusing to change can lead to mistakes we could avoid." She hesitated, then closed her book. "My father believed that the past holds all the answers." "And what do you believe?" Holt asked, watching her closely. Zirala took a deep breath. For the first time in her life, she wasn't sure how to answer. But one thing was clear: meeting Holt had started a change within her, one she could no longer ignore. And for better or worse, her future was about to be rewritten. The palace was alive with movement. Advisors and diplomats rushed through the halls, their expressions filled with urgency. Princess Zirala stood at the center of the council chamber, listening carefully to the reports being delivered. Something was wrong, something that could change everything. "The cosmic disturbance is growing, Your Highness," one of the royal scientists reported. "If it continues, it could destabilize the planetary system. The gravitational shifts are unpredictable, and if left unchecked, our entire orbit could be at risk." Zirala remained calm, though her mind raced. Her planet had faced many challenges before, but this was different. A natural disaster on this scale could destroy not just her world, but many others nearby. She turned toward Captain Holt, who had been quietly listening from the side. "What do your people know about such events?" she asked, her voice steady but urgent. Holt crossed his arms, considering the problem. "We've dealt with similar space anomalies before. If the gravitational shifts are unstable, we need to identify the source. On Earth, we use satellites and deep space probes to gather data. Do you have anything like that?" The royal scientist nodded. "We have orbital sensors, but they haven't been able to get close enough without being affected by the disturbance." Holt's mind worked quickly. "Then we need a team to get closer manually. If we can collect real-time data, we might find a way to stabilize it before it worsens." A murmur spread through the room. The idea was risky. Sending a team directly into the disturbance was dangerous, and no one had attempted such a thing before. Zirala looked around at her advisors, then back at Holt. His confidence was unwavering. He was willing to take action where others hesitated. That human determination, something she had once thought reckless, was beginning to make sense. She took a deep breath. "We cannot afford to wait. Prepare a ship for launch. Captain Holt and I will lead the mission." The room fell silent. Her advisors exchanged worried glances. "Your Highness," one of them protested, "it is too dangerous for you to go personally." Zirala straightened her shoulders. "I am not just a ruler sitting in a palace. If I expect my people to face risks, I must be willing to do the same. Holt smirked slightly. I have to admit, Princess, you're full of surprises. She glanced at him. I am learning from the best, it seems. With that decision made, the preparations began. The best pilots and engineers gathered to modify a ship for the mission. Time was running out, and the crisis was growing worse by the hour. As Zirala and Holt prepared for departure, a strange feeling settled between them, something unspoken but strong. They were from different worlds, raised in different ways, but in this moment, they stood together, ready to face the unknown. And in doing so, they might just change the fate of the galaxy. The royal hangar buzzed with activity. Engineers and technicians rushed to prepare the ship, adjusting the shields and calibrating the navigation system for the dangerous mission ahead. Princess Zirala stood near the entrance, watching as Captain Holt inspected the vessel. His sharp eyes studied every detail, making sure everything was secure. "You don't trust our technology?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. Holt glanced at her and smirked. "It's not about trust, Princess. It's about making sure we don't explode before we even reach our destination." Zirala sighed. His bluntness was both frustrating and refreshing. She had spent years surrounded by advisors who spoke carefully, choosing their words to avoid offense. Holt, however, spoke his mind freely. Inside the ship, they settled into their seats as the engines roared to life. The mission was simple in theory: fly close to the disturbance, gather real-time data, and return safely. In reality, nothing was ever that easy. As the ship lifted off, Holt tapped the control panel. "I'll handle the piloting. This isn't my first time flying into danger." Zirala crossed her arms. "I am perfectly capable of flying." "I don't doubt that," Holt replied. "But I have experience flying in unstable gravitational fields. Let me do this." She hesitated, then nodded. For someone who was used to always being in control, trusting another person wasn't easy. The ship sped through space, the stars blurring past. As they approached the affected zone, the view outside the window changed. The disturbance looked like a swirling void, shifting and bending the light around it. It was like space itself was being torn apart. Holt tightened his grip on the controls. "That doesn't look natural." Zirala's expression darkened. "No, it doesn't. If this was caused by a natural shift, it wouldn't be spreading so fast." The ship's sensors beeped, flashing warnings on the screen. Readings showed strange energy signatures coming from the heart of the disturbance. Zirala leaned forward. "That energy, it's artificial." Holt's jaw clenched, which means someone, or something, created it. Their mission had just become even more dangerous. They weren't just dealing with a cosmic event. They were dealing with an unknown force behind it. "Captain," Zirala said, her voice steady despite the tension, "we need to find out who or what is causing this. If we don't, my planet, and possibly yours, could be in danger." Holt nodded. "Then let's get closer." For the first time, they weren't just two leaders with different ideals. They were two people from different worlds, working together against a common threat. As the ship moved deeper into the disturbance, they knew there was no turning back. Whatever waited for them ahead, they would face it together. 2 seconds, the ship trembled as it moved deeper into the disturbance. The controls flickered, and the gravitational shifts outside made navigation difficult. Captain Holt gritted his teeth, gripping the controls tightly as he adjusted their course. "This turbulence is getting worse," he muttered. Princess Zirala sat beside him, her hand steady on the data console. "The energy readings are changing. It's almost as if something is reacting to our presence." Holt shot her a glance. "You think we're being watched?" Zirala hesitated. "I don't know, but we are definitely not alone in this." The ship's alarms beeped, warning of an approaching anomaly. Outside the window, the disturbance thickened, forming strange patterns of light and shadow. Then, through the shifting energy, something appeared, a structure floating in the void. Holt's eyes narrowed. "That's a station," Zirala gasped. No one knew this existed. Someone built this inside the disturbance. The ship's communication system crackled, and a deep, distorted voice spoke. You should not be here. Holt and Zirala exchanged looks. Whoever they had just encountered did not sound welcoming. Looks like we found our answer, Holt said, tightening his grip on the controls. Before Zirala could respond, the ship lurched violently. A sudden energy pulse struck them, sending them spinning. Sparks flew from the control panel. Holt fought to stabilize the ship, his muscles straining. Hang on, he shouted. Zirala grabbed onto the seat, her breath caught in her throat. For all her training, for all her preparation as a ruler, nothing had prepared her for the helpless feeling of a ship spinning out of control in deep space. Finally, Holt managed to steady the ship, but their systems were failing fast. Smoke filled the cabin, and emergency lights flickered. We're losing power, Zirala said, checking the controls. We need to land. Now. Holt scanned the surroundings and spotted a rocky outcrop near the station. Hold on, I'm bringing us down. The ship groaned as it descended, barely holding together. They crash-landed on the surface, the impact shaking them violently. For a moment, everything was silent except for the sound of their heavy breathing. Holt looked over at Zirala. You okay? She nodded, trying to regain her composure. But for the first time in a long time, she felt vulnerable. She had spent her life being in control, always knowing the next step. Now, she was stranded on an unknown rock, with an enemy nearby and no clear plan. Holt noticed her hesitation. You don't have to hide it, Princess. She looked at him sharply. Hide what? That you're scared. Zirala clenched her jaw. A ruler cannot afford fear. Holt smirked slightly. A good leader knows when to feel it, and when to push through it. Their eyes met, and in that moment, something shifted between them. They weren't just a princess and a soldier anymore. They were two survivors, trapped in the unknown. And for better or worse, they only had each other. The rocky terrain around the crash site was barren, lit by the faint glow of the swirling disturbance overhead. Sparks popped and fizzed from the ship's damaged exterior, and thin trails of smoke curled into the dark sky. Captain Holt stood by the open hatch, scanning the horizon with a focused gaze, while Princess Zirala inspected their emergency supplies. We'll need to move fast, Holt said. If whoever's out there finds us first, we're at a disadvantage. Zirala nodded, her calm voice masking the tension beneath. Our priority is finding a way into that station. If it truly holds the source of this disturbance, we must understand what's happening before it's too late. They set out, navigating the uneven ground with caution. Holt's steps were steady, his years of training guiding him through the unpredictable landscape. Zirala followed close behind, her graceful movements revealing the discipline she had honed from a lifetime of royal duties. The station loomed ahead, a strange blend of alien technology and intricate design. Its surface was covered in glowing patterns that shifted and pulsed, as if alive. Zirala stopped and tilted her head, studying the symbols. These markings, they're ancient, not from my people, nor yours. Someone else built this long ago. Holt frowned. Ancient or not, it's still active. And that means we're not the first ones to try and stop this disturbance. As they approached the station's entrance, they discovered an energy barrier blocking their path. Holt examined the barrier carefully, his fingers brushing along its edge. This isn't just a standard shield. It's responding to movement. Zirala stepped closer, her eyes narrowing, as she analyzed the patterns. There must be a way to disable it. A control node, perhaps. They worked together, combining Zirala's knowledge of advanced technology with Holt's practical problem-solving skills. Each suggestion, each observation, built upon the others, and slowly they began to piece together a solution. When they finally located the control panel hidden within a nearby structure, Zirala took the lead, deciphering the ancient language inscribed on it. Holt kept watch, his sharp eyes scanning the terrain for any sign of danger. I need a few moments, she said, her fingers dancing over the unfamiliar symbols. "You've got them," Holt replied, positioning himself to shield her from potential threats. As the barrier flickered and then disappeared, Zerala stood, a small smile of satisfaction on her face. It worked. Holt gave her a quick nod. "Let's move before someone notices." Together, they stepped through the now unshielded entrance into the unknown interior of the station. Despite the darkness and the tension, their teamwork had brought them one step closer to understanding the disturbance, and one step closer to stopping it. In this moment, the differences between their worlds mattered less than the shared goal that drove them forward. The inside of the station was colder than Zerala had expected. The walls hummed softly with an ancient energy, and faint blue lights illuminated a long corridor ahead. Holt's boots echoed on the metallic floor, and his sharp eyes darted around, ready for any threat. Zerala followed, her every step measured and graceful, though her heart raced with both curiosity and caution. "This place feels alive," Zerala said, her voice quiet. "More like a trap," Holt muttered. "Keep your guard up." They moved deeper into the station, passing strange machines covered in alien symbols. Each device pulsed faintly, as if waiting for a command. Zerala paused at one of the consoles and ran her fingers across the inscriptions. "This isn't just a source of the disturbance," she said. "This station is controlling it. Someone set this up on purpose." Holt stepped closer. "So it's not a natural disaster. It's a weapon." As they pieced together the truth, the corridor ahead suddenly lit up. A holographic figure materialized before them, tall and imposing. Its form shifted and flickered, a blend of glowing light and shadow. "You should not have come here," the figure said, its voice echoing like a distant storm. Holt instinctively stepped in front of Zerala, shielding her. "We're here to stop whatever you're doing," he said firmly. The figure's light intensified, and the entire station seemed to hum louder. "You are too late. The disturbance is already spreading. You cannot undo what has been done." Zerala, her voice calm but unyielding, stepped forward. "If this is your creation, you can stop it. Whatever purpose this serves, it will destroy more than you intend. You must shut it down." The figure's light flickered, as if it were hesitating. But then, with a low rumble, it spoke again. "No one can stop it now. But if you insist on trying, you must face the consequences." Suddenly, the corridor shook. Machines activated around them, whirring to life. The air grew thick with a pulsing energy. Holt grabbed Zerala's arm, pulling her back as the floor beneath them started to shift. "Looks like we got a fight on our hands," Holt said, his voice steady. "Then we'll face it together," Zerala replied, her calm demeanor masking the determination in her eyes. The two of them worked quickly. Holt's instincts and combat training allowed him to dodge and counter the machine's attacks, while Zerala used her knowledge of ancient technology to disable key systems. They moved as a team, each complementing the other's strengths. As the holographic figure grew weaker with each system failure, Zerala approached the main console at the center of the room. "I can shut it down," she said, "but I need time." "Do it," Holt said, holding off another wave of machines. Zerala's fingers moved swiftly across the console, entering codes and patterns that had been hidden for centuries. The humming grew louder, the lights brighter, and then, suddenly, everything stopped. The station went silent. The holographic figure faded, and the pulsing energy of the disturbance began to stabilize. Holt let out a breath, lowering his weapon. Zerala stepped back from the console, her shoulders sagging slightly with relief. "It's over," she said quietly. Holt turned to her, a faint smile breaking through his serious expression. "You did it." "We did it," Zerala corrected, meeting his gaze. In the stillness that followed, both of them felt the weight of what they had accomplished. Together, they had faced the unknown and prevailed. And now, with the disturbance neutralized, there was hope that their two worlds might find peace. The starlit sky above the planet was calm once more. The disturbance that had once threatened the lives of millions had faded, leaving a peaceful silence in its wake. Princess Zirala and Captain Holt stood side by side, gazing out from the observation platform of the palace. The crisis was over, but their journey had only just begun. Zirala took a deep breath, letting the cool night air fill her lungs. It feels different now, as if a heavy weight has been lifted. Holt, leaning casually against the railing, nodded. It's the kind of peace you only appreciate after a fight's been won. The princess turned to face him. She had always seen herself as composed, in control, but Holt had challenged her in ways she hadn't expected. His unshakable determination, his willingness to act in the face of danger, it had shown her a perspective she had never considered before. Your courage, she said quietly, and your ability to adapt. I see now why humans have earned such respect among the stars. Holt smiled faintly. And I've learned something from you too, Princess. Your traditions, your sense of duty, they're not just old ideas. They give you a strength I admire. I think we're both better for having worked together. A silence fell between them, not uncomfortable, but thoughtful. The princess looked out over her city, its glowing lights shimmering like stars below. She knew that the path forward would not be easy. There were still centuries of mistrust to overcome, cultural divides to bridge, and new challenges that would arise. But she also knew that she was no longer facing these challenges alone. When I first met you, Zirala said, I saw you as a symbol of change, something unpredictable. I thought it might disrupt the order I've always known. Now, I see you as a partner in something greater. Together, we can build something new. Holt's expression softened. He wasn't one for grand speeches, but he understood the weight of her words. Sometimes change isn't about destroying the old, he said. It's about finding a new way forward. And I think we've proven we can do that. Their shared victory had done more than stop a cosmic disaster. It had laid the foundation for a future where human ingenuity and alien tradition could coexist. For the first time in generations, there was a chance for unity, real unity, between their worlds. As the first rays of dawn began to light the horizon, Zirala extended her hand. Holt looked at it for a moment, then grasped it firmly. In that gesture was a promise. To work together, to learn from each other, and to lead their people toward a brighter future. The sun rose higher, and with it came hope. A new day had begun, not just for Zirala and Holt, but for everyone who had witnessed their journey. Together, they had shown that even the most different of worlds could find common ground and forge a lasting peace.